I always like to say I bring the party when I come to talk. Sometimes people ask me, so, what do you do for a living? And I say, I talk about sex slavery and sex abuse. What do you do? And they usually stutter, and then it's very awkward. I'm like, do you want a hug? We can talk about it. Today's really been really neat for me to hear these speakers because it's kind of normalized a lot of things that I thought I was the only one that struggled with. For example, have you guys ever made really erroneous misconceptions that you're like, how did I actually get away with thinking that, and then I told other people this? This is so embarrassing. I've made more than a few. Just to give you an example, when I was probably this is around the age of 8, I thought that it was inappropriate for you to wear a big sleeve, like a big t-shirt with just leggings underneath. I thought that was not ladylike. So I would take the shirt that went down to your knees, and I would tuck it into my biker shorts because I thought that was more appropriate. It wasn't. It was embarrassing. I also thought that in high school, it would be a really good idea for me to try pole vaulting, even though I was afraid of heights. So I spent a full year trying to pole vault and running up to the line and then stopping. It wasted a lot of time. This is also one of those where in college, I thought that everyone can learn how to sing, right? That's what they tell you. If you practice long enough, you can learn how to sing. So I took voice for a full year. And at the end of the year, my voice teacher was like, Jess, I just think that there are other things you could be doing with your time. Got it. One misconception that I had as a child, though, was really awkward. And since we're all sharing here at TED, I thought this was the perfect place to air it all out. So here it goes. This is probably my most embarrassing one. Until I was about the age of 8, I thought that I was black. It's as awkward for me to tell you as it is for you to hear, and don't worry, obviously I was confused. Now, I had good reason, or so I thought, to think that I was black. I was raised in the Deep South with just my single white grandfather, who adopted me after my birth parents abandoned me. And God love him, he did his best. I can't imagine being 60 years old and being handed a child to raise on your own. But the fact of the matter was, he was very racist. So right about the age that I started realizing I didn't look like any of the other kids around me, I naturally started to ask him, Grandpa, so what am I? And he would answer me every time with the same thing. You're white. You are white. And I would say, but when I look in the mirror, that has to be wrong. That can't be accurate. But I was left to figure out my identity, my race, on my own. And thankfully, Ingrid, you weren't alone in this. But also, back then, when you took standardized tests in school, there were only a handful of options for race. And this really, really stumped me. So I would usually call the teacher over to me, both out of confusion as well as to make a point, and ask her, which one should I choose? But she would just shrug and walk away. So that left me to think, okay, I'm smart, I can do this. If I'm not white, the only other option on here that makes sense is black, so I must be black. I don't know if you can tell. I'm not. I'm half East Indian and a whole bunch of something else. Who knows? But sadly, in comparison to the rest of my childhood, my racial identity was hardly my greatest struggle. Statistics tell us that I'm not the only one in the room here who grew up in a household where violence and substance abuse were the norm. My grandfather's alcoholic tendencies and verbal and physical abuse towards me, to be honest, presented a daily struggle. When I was 10, he hit me hard enough to significantly bruise me, and I thought I finally had the proof I needed to get help, or so I'd hoped. But when I went to the teacher and I told her what happened, she was really reluctant to say anything. And she asked me a few times, "Are you sure that you want me to report this? Are you ready for the consequences?" And I remember thinking as a 10-year-old, this took so much courage for me to come here and tell you, I can't believe you're trying to convince me not to say anything. But eventually she reported my case, much to my relief. And then my grandfather was brought into the school. But unfortunately, he was just given a slap on the wrist and sent back home with me, having the knowledge that I now was reporting it. So you can imagine how that went at home. Then the school attempted to comfort me by asserting that I only had 8 more years left until I would turn 18. My grandfather coped with his alcohol. He did his best. But the reality was his daily verbal abuse, calling me names like slut, whore, worthless, you're never going to amount to anything, made me eventually believe that I was all of those things. In addition to the physical abuse, I felt alone and trapped and without a voice. I suffocated for years under the weight of depression and thoughts of suicide. Then when I was 15, he had a paralyzing stroke. And to be honest, my first feeling was one of relief. And I felt horrible for thinking about it, but the first thought I had was, thank God, he won't be able to beat me anymore. But because we were each other's only family, I was all he had and he was all I had to take the responsibility of caring for him while his health plummeted and his violent alcoholism continued. I felt imprisoned. He survived long enough to see me turn 18 and graduate from high school a few weeks later, and then shortly after that, he passed away, and I was left an orphan. Now, as you can imagine, for a long time, I really resented my childhood. I was angry. And not only that, I resented the people around me, the parents who knew me, the teachers and counselors at school who knew about my abuser and decided not to intervene. I didn't know where to go after he passed away. I decided to haphazardly start college. But as fate would have it, along the way, I met a medical missions team at my church who happened to be traveling to India and Nepal and smuggling $10,000 worth of medical supplies into the region. And then they asked me to come along with them. Now, I was always the adult from a kid, right? So when they initially asked me to come along, I questioned their decision-making process and also their sanity to willingly go into a war zone. But then, one of my best friends on the team, Kari, said, Jess, why not come? You can actually be around people that look like you. And given my childhood identity crisis, I could hardly say no after that. En route to Nepal, we stopped in Calcutta, and we stopped at an orphanage to serve them. And this was the first time I had been to India, so you can imagine, I just could not believe that there were so many people that looked like me. But also, I saw myself in them a lot, And at this orphanage, I found out that the girls age out of the care at the age of 16. So when I innocently asked one of the staffers what happened to the girl if she had to leave at 16, they solemnly responded that, well, unless she was married or she could find work, she would likely be forced into prostitution. I'm sorry, prostitution? She's just a child. I had never heard of child prostitution. I thought it was criminal, too, for the small percentage of children who were actually rescued off the street to then face such desperation that their only option for survival was to sell themselves. I had never thought that someone would want to have sex with a child, let alone how such an atrocity could even exist in the modern world. That moment changed my life. From that moment forward, I knew about child sex slavery, and I decided I could never turn away. Later, I would learn that for an overwhelming majority of those who have been sexually exploited have also suffered through physical abuse, psychological abuse, and sexual abuse. And I realized any one of those kids could have been me. I was just as vulnerable. I, too, lacked family support and encouragement. I could empathize with them because I shared the same feelings of being forgotten, being lost, crying for help, and having nobody do anything about it. And suddenly, all that resentment that I carried for so long turned into this righteous indignation and fiery passion to help those trapped in sexual slavery. I realized I was no longer a victim, and I wanted to use my voice on behalf of the voiceless. Let me put it into context for you really quickly. Right now, it's estimated that there are more than 1 million women and children who are trapped in sexual slavery around the world. It's estimated also, according to a study done at the University of Pennsylvania, there are 200 to 300 children at risk for sexual exploitation here in the United States, where the average age for entry into prostitution is just 12. Slavery has been reported in almost every major city in the world. Pimps and mamasans, female pimps, have a way of systematically targeting children. They prey on easy targets, children with low self-esteem, the uneducated, the marginalized, the disenfranchised, the runaway, or like me, the throwaway. Then they maintain control with threats of intimidation and terror. Let me quickly bring one of these stories to life. After my initial trip to Southeast Asia, I continued to return every year and a half, and I happened to stop at a rescue home in Cambodia. And there I met the sweetest girl. She had been at the rehabilitation center for just a few months, but her story is unfortunately common. At the age of 7, her stepfather and a neighbor repeatedly raped her. When she finally gathered the courage to tell her mother, instead of helping her, banished the child from their home. So she was homeless and without anyone. So when a woman from the community approached her and offered her a place to stay, the girl took it. Unknowingly, though, she had stepped into a trap, an underground brothel. There, she was forced to have sex with 10 to 20 men a night, still a child. And if she resisted, she would be beaten, worst yet, electrocuted. This went on for years. No days off, no freedom. Finally, a client requested that she come to his home. Seeing this as the only chance she was going to get for freedom, she escaped out of a bathroom window. She made it to the police station and from there was taken to the rehabilitation center. Now, even though she was free from her physical bondage, like many like her who have been enslaved, whether as victims of abuse or as victims from the sex industry, it would take years for her to break free from the chains of psychological imprisonment, for her to find a renewed sense of identity, for her to have a self-worth, for her to feel empowered to make decisions over her future, just like I did. The sex slavery is a really complicated issue. It has a lot of gray areas. But we do know if there is no more demand, there will no longer be supply. You can help curb the demand for child sex by condemning behaviors that contribute to the exploitation of women. A lot of what Jackson was saying is right on point. We often look and say, well, men are the problem. If they're the buyers, that means they're also the solution. You can help this by condemning behaviors such as going to strip clubs, engaging in pornography, viewing live sex cams. All these activities that our culture deems acceptable actually contribute to the normalization of the commodification of women. You can also get educated. There are plenty of documentaries, books, media that can help you learn more. Dozens of agencies and nonprofit organizations are looking to you to help keep them afloat through donations. You can volunteer and help girls and boys in rehabilitation centers. And for those who are actually free, whether it's from abuse or from sex slavery, they need your encouragement to believe in a better world and to fight for the safe, happy future each of us deserves. As Theodore Roosevelt once said, do what you can with what you have where you are. Do what you can with what you have where you are. I'm asking you today to stand up for those who cannot. I'm asking you to join me in the fight against sexual exploitation. I truly believe that this generation can put an end to modern-day slavery. Together, we can do it.